Sonic X Shadow Generations is only a few months away, and I am very excited for this game. I truly feel like this will be one of the best Sonic games we've gotten in a long time. I've already talked about how good the level design looks, the music, the boss fights, and all of that good stuff in previous videos. However, in this video, I want to talk about how Shadow Generations and how Sonic X Shadow Generations as a whole could change the course of 3D Sonic forever. When it comes to 3D Sonic games, there are three main gameplay formulas that the games follow. We have the Adventure formula, the Boost formula, and the Open Zone formula. The Adventure formula was present in the early 2000s and featured open level design with more platforming. The Boost formula, on the other hand, has a more linear level design with more reaction-based elements. And then we have the Open Zone formula, which is more about exploration and puzzle solving. All three of these formulas have their fans, and I'm a fan of all of them. But something that I've noticed from Shadow Generations so far is that it attempts to combine all three 3D Sonic formulas into one package. Frontiers tried to do something like this with the cyberspace levels, but Shadow Generations just does it way better if you ask me. Looking at the one full level we've seen so far from the game, that being Space Colony Arc Act 1, it has a good mix of open and linear level design. At the beginning of the level, it's more streamlined and platformy, but it gradually eases you into the more open area with multiple branching pathways. And on top of having that adventure level design mixed with boost elements, the automation that boost levels are normally known for is almost completely absent here. We've seen multiple instances of the player having to boost off of ramps and whatnot to gain enough distance to skip certain segments of the level. In that sense, the boost in Shadow Generations acts sort of like the spin dash from the adventure games. So from what we've seen, it looks like Shadow Generations is mixing both boost and adventure elements into its level design. And then we have the new mechanics that were introduced for the game, the Doom powers. Power-ups in Sonic games have been sort of a mixed bag. We had the wisps and colors, which felt very gimmicky and were only really there to get hidden collectibles and whatnot, not to mention how pace-breaking that whole thing was. And then later on, of course, we had the Emerald powers and Superstars, which were the same thing, except that was a 2D classic Sonic game. Now, I know we haven't seen much of the actual Doom powers yet, but what we have seen is the Chaos Control ability. They made one simple mechanic so versatile in this one level. The pure idea of stopping time at just the right moment to take a quicker path may seem small, but I feel like this could open the door for way more creativity when it comes to branching paths and levels. You see, you can't just constantly use the Chaos Control ability whenever you want. You have to fill up the gauge by defeating enemies and gathering rings, so you have to use the Chaos Control wisely. This allows the player to plan exactly where they're going to use the Chaos Control to take different pathways. Now, I know some people might not be a fan of this, but if you ask me, I feel like this is a good reaction time element, especially with the whole strategy aspect to it. I think one of the main problems people have with the boost mechanic is that it's not necessarily a tool, but rather it's just an extra button to push that makes you go faster. That's why I'm a big fan of the fact that you can't abuse the Chaos Control system. Now, let's talk about the third gameplay style we haven't yet talked about, which is the Open Zone. We haven't learned much about the new white space Open Zone hub world in Shadow Generations, other than the fact that it is inspired by Frontiers and there's stuff to do around the map, but I just gotta say that I am a massive fan of the Open Zone acting as a hub world. Frontiers did something sort of similar, as the cyberspace levels were accessed through the Open Zone. However, the open area was the main part of Frontiers. Here, it takes more of a back seat and lets the main level design shine. I just think for future Sonic games that don't go for the full open world feel, having an Open Zone hub world that includes some of the aspects of a fully open world game would be enough. Something many people have also noticed from the level design in Shadow Generations is the fact that the set pieces along with the cutscenes give the game a more cinematic feel. Personally, this is something I've been wanting in Sonic games forever. The quick time events that have you doing cool shit, the set pieces that have you sliding down buildings, it's all very cool. However, the problem with this is that on replays, I have a feeling it will get stale very quickly. The first time playing, oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. But when you're replaying the level and trying to go for that S rank, I can see this getting annoying. So a solution for that would be to make these skippable, because they're not needed at all. Sure, it'll be pretty jarring going from a spaceship to a wacky cyber city, but at least it won't break your momentum. Regardless, I am still a big fan of the cinematic feel this game is trying to go for, and I hope it returns in future Sonic games. Next up, we have the game's story. It's clear that Sega wants to go back to more serious storytelling in Sonic games. It started with Frontiers with the somber tone that game had, and I feel like it's carrying over to this game as well. Shadow's backstory is nothing new to the series. I mean, we had a whole damn game based on it, but with what we've seen from the prologue animation preview in particular, I think they're going to expand upon it and add more context to Shadow's story, and I can't wait to see that. As far as future Sonic stories go, I think a more serious tone would work, but it also needs to have more lighthearted moments. I think Frontiers did a good job at this for the most part, but it definitely needs some work. But I really like how they're doing it with Sonic X Shadow Generations though, because the lighthearted moments in this package are done through, well, Sonic Generations. We practically have two separate campaigns here with contrasting tones. And we know that Shadow Generations takes place at the same time as Sonic Generations, as the Time Eater shows up in the trailer. Now, I have never been a huge fan of multiple campaigns in Sonic games because more often than not, I just want to play as Sonic and not have to worry about treasure hunting or mech shooting or having to play the same damn game 4 times or anything of that sort. But when the campaigns are different, not necessarily in terms of gameplay, but in terms of story and tone, then that's awesome. You have this lighthearted blast from the past adventure, but then you have this dark journey through Shadow's past. I can definitely see them doing something like this for a future Sonic and Shadow focused game if they ever choose to do that. And for my final point, I want to talk about how this game can impact future remasters or re-releases of Sonic games. I know you all want a Sonic Unleashed remaster, and trust me, I do too, but at this point, I don't think a direct port is very likely. If Shadow Generations is successful, I can see them trying to do another character-focused expansion. Maybe Tails, Knuckles, or hey, even Amy would be cool to see in an Unleashed expansion, but who knows what they'll do. So yeah, that's how I think Sonic X Shadow Generations could change the course of 3D Sonic games. I know that Sega has stated that they're going to continue with the open zone formula for mainline releases, and that's great, but if they ever decide to do another adventure-esque game, I think some of the ideas from Shadow Generations would be cool to see. Iizuka has stated that he wants to make another adventure game, so maybe Sonic Adventure 3 will eventually happen. But that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.